మాట్లాడేదంతా దాంట్లో నడుస్తుంది.
ఏం మాట్లాడతాం?
అదేరా ఇది.
అదేనా?
నేను చదువుకున్నాను దీంట్లో. హలో సిస్టర్, వాట్ ఆర్ యూ డూయింగ్? అన్ని వస్తాయి.
Rama ma'am, can we start, ma'am?
Yes, Walter. Yes. Did you find out Dr. Pankaj's convenience also? Dr. Pankaj?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready.
Shall
You
we
can go
start,
ahead.
sir?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. You can.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
A very warm and pleasant evening to one and all gathered here. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to day 2 of the 8-day National Online Faculty Development Program on Research, Publication and Patent in Humanities and Sciences, organized by the Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram campus, Chennai. Today we have with us yet another experienced speaker, Dr. Pankaj Narki, Assistant Professor from the Department of Basic Sciences and Humanities, Mahendra University, Hyderabad, who is going to deliver a talk on writing abstract and review of literature. I'm sure it's going to be yet another insightful lecture, and I request all the participants to stay with us till the end of the session. I would now like to request Dr. Rama, Professor and Head Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Walter. So good evening to the wonderful gathering once again. Welcome you to day 2 of the 8-day online faculty development program on research, publication and patents in humanities and sciences. Today we have with us Dr. Pankaj Narke, Assistant Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Mahendra University, Hyderabad. The topic he's going to deliberate on, as Walter said, is very, very important because, like our guest speaker, session 1 speaker, Dr. Anand Mahanand said yesterday, many of the research scholars especially are not able to differentiate between an abstract and an introduction. So it's very, very important that they are able to evince the difference between the two, understand it in its full sense, and then present it. Because in research today, there is a lot of many things are have been upgraded as far as research is concerned. and expectations are very high today. And you know that the reviewers, the examiners also expect a lot from the research scholars. So today's talk by Dr. Pankaj is definitely going to throw a lot of light on this very, very important aspect of writing an abstract and also review of literature. So this is going to benefit the research scholars to the maximum. I request all of them to utilize this session and stay with us till the end so that they can benefit out of it. So at this juncture, I would like to, on behalf of the Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram campus, I would like to extend a very, very hearty welcome to Dr. Pankaj. So hearty welcome, sir, and thank you so much for joining us today. And I will also like to welcome the participants. We are very happy that there is overwhelming response from the participants because this is the research. So many of them would definitely want to listen to all the speakers who are going to deliberate on more important topics in the coming days also. So I would like to welcome all the participants. I welcome my colleagues and I also welcome my co-conveners to this wonderful day. And I hand the session over to Walter again. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You set the right tone to take the session further. I would now like to request Dr. Savita, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, to welcome the resource person of the day to the virtual gathering. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Walter. Good evening. It is a great honor for me to introduce Dr. Pankaj Narke, our guest speaker of this evening. He is working as Assistant Professor of English in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences in the School of Engineering at Mahindra University, Hyderabad. He has a PhD in English language education from the EFL University, Hyderabad. He is an expert in the areas of technology, enhanced education, teacher training, and intercultural competence. Dr. Pankaj is also a Fulbright alumnus. Dr. Pankaj has been teaching at the university level in India and abroad. He is a cross-cultural consultant at the Global Institute, USA. Earlier in 2017, he had worked on UGC MHRD-sponsored NMEICT projects as subject expert and script writer in e-content development programs for B.Ed English. And in 2015, teacher education projects with Tara Learning Solutions, India, as trained in-service teachers from St. Gabriel's Foundation, Thailand, with a focus on English as a language of instruction for teaching different subjects. Today, we are privileged to have an opportunity to listen to him. On behalf of all gathered here, I welcome you, sir, and request you to take over the forum. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Savita, for such a warm welcome and such a wonderful welcome note. I would also like to thank Dr. Rama for updating me with the yesterday's session and also to establish the tone, as rightly said by Dr. Walter, that what we are getting into as the practice for research writing and publication. So all in all, I would like to thank all of you to give me this opportunity to address this huge and enthusiastic gathering today. And I hope I would be able to help them with some sort of experience that I have. So I'll start by sharing my screen. Right. So very good evening to all the participants. I think it's full house. 300 logins I can see. So that's a wonderful, overwhelming response to this online talk series. And I'm very happy to have all of you here. Before I begin, I would like to quickly give a couple of, I would like to make requests rather than suggestions that please check once that you have muted yourself on the laptop or mobile device that you're using. If you have any questions, kindly send those to the conveners or put it in the chat box so that the conveners can choose those questions later on after the session is over. And then I can talk to you about those questions we can discuss, okay? So it would be great if we have a smooth session without any sort of, technical difficulties. So yeah, these are the two requests that I have to make to all the participants attending in Zoom. And of course, there are people attending on YouTube, I think. So we can also take some questions from there. So let me begin by reading out the title of my session, which is Academic Writing and Research. And I'll be dealing with two important aspects, the parts which are involved in academic writing and research. So one is writing of abstract, and the other one is writing of review of literature. Okay, so I'll be dealing with these two topics, one after the other. So let me begin by starting with abstract. What is an abstract and why do we need an abstract? I'm sure this gathering is very knowledgeable and you all know what an abstract is, but I'm going to take it a little deeper for our understanding what is an abstract. So normally, as we all know, abstract is face of an academic document. So it is as important as your profile. Let's say in today's world, the context, the profile picture of anybody's profile, okay? DP, what we say. So normally people choose to accept or reject requests based on their DP. This is a very informal example that I'm giving right in the beginning, but to establish its importance, abstract is something that gives an overview of the entire academic document. Okay, therefore, when we think of writing for academic purposes or publication, your abstract is very important. As all of us know, any good journal or conference calls for abstracts. They don't call for papers right away. So reading your abstract gives them a sense of what kind of research you are going to conduct, whether it is relevant, whether it is inclusive of all that is required as in the theme of the conference or the journal, and how systematically it is going to be carried out, right? Depending on that, there would be acceptance or rejection of an abstract. Therefore, it is safe to say that it is a face of an academic document. Most condensed form of writing. Now, normally you see good conferences or journals will ask you to write an abstract somewhere between 150 to 200 words, right? So something between 150 and 200 words, you'll have to put, let's say, a good research or good study, which has been carried out for years, or let's say at least for a year. You'll have to condense all the findings, all the justifications in that smaller space. Therefore, it is the most condensed form of writing. Now, is it safe to say that we can choose any 150 or 200 words? If the conference is too liberal, they'll give you 300 words, but I'm sure not more than that, or any journal will not allow you to write an abstract more than 300 words if it is a research paper, right? So it is very important for us to make choice of content, also to make choice of language that sort of allows you to touch upon every important aspect of your research and make it available for the reviewers to see, to give them a gist of what you are going to write. A piece of writing that helps the reader make a choice, right? So this is a normal, regular function of an abstract. For example, if you are attending a conference or reading through a journal, you'll initially be given the list of abstracts. Some books also, include list of abstracts first, and then the chapters come in, right? Or even if it is, chapter-wise, you still have the abstract first, right? So it is kind of a time-saving device for the reader. it gives them a hint, or it helps them to choose whether they want to spend time on this particular chapter or this particular paper, or just to move on, whether it is going to interest them right away. And as I said right in the beginning, that it can be as important as the profile picture. And here, as I'm saying, it's like a trailer to a movie. So I think this would be more relatable example. We most of the times we see the trailer in cinema hall or on YouTube. We see what is the cast like, what is the story like. Not that we understand each and everything there, but we get a general hint about what is going to be there in the movie. Similarly, in a paper, the major ideas that you're going to discuss need to be mentioned or pinned in an abstract. So the objective is to provide an overall an overview of a scholarly document. That's what I said right in the beginning, right? So an overview, what is the scope of it, and what are the major areas that you're going to deal with in detail, right? It provides the context. Now, this is very important. As I said right at the beginning, for readers, it saves time. It also tells the reader in which context is this paper written, if this study has been carried out. Okay, so setting up context is very, very crucial. And if a right abstract does that, then that is the best way for the reader to navigate through a book or a journal, or let's say a conference proceeding, or any other place where you write your abstract. So these are some of the major functions, right? So what does an abstract contain? Now, rightly said by Dr. Rama and my professor, Dr. Anand, who was my teacher professor at EFL University when I was doing my PhD, has also said the same thing, that there is normally a confusion among people that whether abstract is the same as the introduction. Okay, a lot of times we see that abstract is right, straightforward. It is taken from the abstract, and then it forms the first paragraph of the introduction. So that's where the confusion is, right? So abstract cannot be part of, or at least cannot be an introduction itself. It has its own function. It has its own role to play in an academic document. Therefore, what does it have? It has background information of your research. Very briefly, we will be looking at an abstract. So I will not talk more of theory, just setting a tone, and then we will go to the actual abstract and we'll see how it is done. Okay, so it contains background information on your research. So let's say any sort of study that you are doing, you need to set it in a context, right? We cannot just, as it is very familiar to us as researchers, it might not be equally familiar to the audience, right? People who are going to read, or their context might be different. Therefore, to establish the context, you'll have to give background information. And that's what abstract does. Statement of problem and research question. Now, the word problem here is very, very important. If there is no problem, there is no research, or if there is vice versa. Okay, so without problem, research is something that is not required, I would say. Okay, that could be a very personal opinion, but I think most of you would agree. So research is normally done to solve some sort of problem, some sort of a need in the existing context, right? So it is very important to situate what is that you are going to address. Why is it required? For example, somebody is conducting a study, like I don't know how many of you are language teachers here, but my examples would be from language education perspective, but other people also in sciences, and if we have audience coming from engineering background or any other discipline, will also be able to relate that if you are taking up something which is already researched enough, let's say 20 years ago or 30 years ago, then probably there's enough research. You don't have to invest your resources unless and until there's a fresh perspective or there is a need for it, right? Therefore, it is important for you to tell today's problem. What is problem, right? Why is this research important? And then what is this particular research going to extract? What is that you're going to address? So research question. So these two are very, very important components of an abstract. Rationale for your research. So why this research? Because you're going back to the problem. So your background, your problem, now you have rationale. Why is this research required? Who will this research help? Now, this is not that much in detail, okay? There would be 1 or 2 statements about it, maximum 1 statement, okay? We'll see those statements here. But rationale for your research, methods of research. From rationale, you move to, okay, you have research question. This is why it is required. Let's say the bad memory of COVID-19, okay? So let's say somebody is willing to conduct a research on social distancing. Why is this is a social research? So why is social distancing important? How did social distancing help, right, in breaking the chain? So what is the rationale of your research? Probably if this is done systematically, if there's a proper pattern to it, probably it is easier in the future for people to adopt this particular method and break the chain of any sort of infection, right? Now, what is the method of your research? It is very important. Now, you cannot just say this is important and therefore it is required to be researched. You'll have to tell what is your systematic plan to do it. How did you do it? And this is where your scholarly knowledge is reflected. So how are you planning to do it? Whether it is doable, what are your methods, how reliable they are, and all. So methods of research are very important. Major findings, you'll have to throw light on a couple of major findings of your research in an abstract towards the end. What did you find? And the implications, a general line. So why is this particular study important? Who will it help? How does it affect the present context? So if you see, you'll have these 6 important components of an abstract. So any abstract, if you ask me to review an abstract, I'll look for these 6 important components and I'll decide whether this abstract is complete or not. Okay, so you can make this as a checklist. You can take a screenshot maybe or write it down. So if you think that an abstract has all these things, then probably it is a complete abstract, in my opinion. Okay. Now, let's take a sample abstract. So I've taken this from a paper. The title of the paper is Gender Differences in Professional Identities and Development of Engineering Skills Among Early Career Engineers in Finland. Okay, so this is a fresh study to 2022, and it's a nicely written study. So those who find it relevant can also check the source link. Now, this is an abstract. I want you to spend, like, let's say a minute, just skim through this and try to identify these 6 points. Do we have background? Do we have a problem statement? Do we have research question? Do we have rationale? Do we have method? Do we have findings? Do we have implications? Just take a look. I don't want you to respond right away. Just try and get a sense of it. This is a published paper in a very good journal. Right. So let's take the same abstract for analysis. So now, if we break it down individually, you can very well say this first statement gives us background information. What is background information? Formation of professional identity is a process where individuals attempt to bring together the social expectations. So this is a little bit of theoretical, conceptual understanding, a little bit of what is the area of knowledge that you are addressing. Okay, a little bit of information into theory of or the conceptual understanding of the topic. Okay, one statement, and I think it covers. Do we have problem statement? Yes. So the cultural landscape of engineering is masculine in various ways, which can be challenging, especially for female engineers who need to match the cultural expectations with their personal identities, right? So it is talking about a problem. It could be challenging for female engineers because they need to match cultural expectations with their personal identities, right? And those who understand engineering education, even in India, will be able to relate this to the existing situation, right? So this is a problem statement that probably this particular researcher, this is a research problem that this particular researcher is trying to address. What do we have next? Do we have research gap? So far, few studies have compared the professional identities of early career men and women. What is the research gap here? Few studies have compared. Now, a lot of times we see people give absolute statement. No study has compared professional identities of early career men and women. No study, there is absolutely no reference to this and that. Now, that is an extreme language to use, okay? Because one cannot claim that you've read all the studies in this particular area. So hedging is very, very important, and better to say a very few studies, rarely this problem has been addressed, or there is a requirement for this problem to be addressed in a specific context, right? So these could be the hedges that you can use instead of giving an absolute statement saying that there's nothing existing at all. But you can see this is a research, there is a research gap here. That is a kind of rationale. Now, what is the objective? What is that you're trying to achieve through this study? So this study aims to understand the professional identities of newly graduated Finnish male and female engineers by analyzing their perceptions of the importance and development of professional engineering skills. Very clear, very nicely presented the thought. What is it that this particular study is going to achieve? Okay. Then methodology. So an analysis of course. Now this is very important, and particularly if you're a researcher, be a PhD scholar or faculty, you would understand this better. This is very, very important and crucial. Now this is where normally what people do is they cross the word limit. Okay, so you have to be very, very precise and very measurable in this particular section. So an analysis of cross-sectional survey data of more than 4,000 early career engineers. So what kind of data you have? Who are the people? So who are the people? Who are the subjects? Early career engineers. How many? The data from 4,000 people, subjects, right? Suggest now this also gives you a methodology. This also talks about the tool. What is a tool? A survey. Okay. Number of participants, profile of the participants, literally given in a phrase, nothing more than that. Also, you have findings. So suggest some gender differences related to professional identities and indicates that the observed differences in value and perceived skills can put women at a greater risk of dropping out of engineering career. Now, this gives the overall finding of your research. If you can carefully read these last 4 lines, it gives us a lot of information about this research. Okay, so it tells you who are the people, how did you collect the data, what is that you observed, what are the tools that you've used, and what is that your research showing. Okay, now you don't have here you don't have an implication here, but if you have space for it, you can put a liner there. So this study helps understand this or establishes context for XYZ and all, right? But as you can see here, at least these 5 points are extremely, extremely important, and they've been given in a very less complicated, in a very informative manner in this abstract. Now I've broken them down, but they form one paragraph, and that is the abstract. Okay. Now, all said and done, that this is the abstract, looks very good. I believe that some of you have already written wonderful abstracts published, okay? But those who are like beginners, or probably those who have experienced rejection in papers conferences that, okay, you need to revise your abstract, or you need to resubmit, or your theme does not match. Okay, so what do? So you have one area of research and you have a related area of, like, journal or a conference which is not absolutely about your research, which is, let's say, overlapping 60% or 70%. In that case, you deserve to present something nice in that particular conference, or publish something in that particular journal. But then, can you just say that, okay, this is my area of research and I'm going to write only this and not something relevant to your theme? Then that is going to be a problematic case. So in some cases, you'll have to adapt to the requirement, change a little bit, and present. Okay, and now that's what you need to do. So let's see the process of writing an abstract. So any writing, for that matter, can be divided into these parts, but let's talk about abstract at this point of time. So pre-writing stage would be thorough with the topic, research question, method of research, results, conclusion of your study. These are very, very important points. Okay. Now, most of the times you would say, okay, that we are not going to write the entire paper. We are just going to submit an abstract, probably of the study that we are going to take, undertake in the next couple of months, and then go for a conference, or then submit the entire paper for publication or something like that. So how are we going to be very sure about what are the findings? See, those conferences or journals which ask for abstract in advance, they also know that your study is undergoing. Okay, all that they want to see is how clear are you about your research. What is that roadmap that you're going to follow? Now, these things are very, very crucial in planning a study, and you are expecting some sort of results. Ultimately, what you find is something that you're going to present at that point of time. But this is the roadmap, right? So you need to be very thorough with these things. Topic. Now, within topic, what do we have in topic? We have various variables in the topic. Okay, so that those variables we need to understand clearly. Research question tells us what is that? Why are we doing this? Ultimately, why is this required? Right? Where is it taking us? This is like the North Star that guides you of the entire journey. Right? Method. What are the steps? Are they right? Are they systematic? Are they suitable? Results, probably what do you anticipate or what you already have. And the conclusion, of course, which is inclusive of the implications. Revise the review of your paper thoroughly. Okay. Now, this is very important. You need to know the conceptual ideas in that particular area. You need to be very thorough with this when you, when you venture into writing an abstract. So you need to know in which gap, in which crowd. Let's say, very simple. I'll give you an example. You are taking part in a party, right? So you should know this is a huge gathering, in which group you're going to be part of, right? Similarly, there's a huge, there's a loads of studies that are existing in that particular area. Why is this study important? Why is it significant? Okay, so you need to know where you're going to situate it. Therefore, it is very important for you to understand the review, understand the literature in the related area. Identify the keywords. Now, keywords are normally something that they are, to say buzzwords in that area of research. Okay, so let's say if there's somebody in engineering right now here, artificial intelligence, machine learning, human applications, or many other terms, let's say blockchain network and all. So these are buzzwords these days. So if people need to be told about some event in very briefly, these buzzwords help. So keywords in that way are very helpful, because they define which area, what is the major area that you are talking about. While writing stage, so write 1 or 2 sentences to introduce the topic, as we saw in the sample abstract. So it can be a conceptual, theoretical idea, where is this particular research situated, what is that you're going to do, right? So a couple of sentences for that, which is normally theoretical knowledge. Statement on research gap or research problem. So this is where it is leading to. So like we saw, very few number of studies have been conducted in areas like perceptions on like engineering, female engineering students and their identities, social identities, right? So that was a research gap. So you need to identify the problem where it is going to address. Research questions, you'll have to write it in this order. Objectives of the study, objective or objectives. 1 or 2 sentences describing your research method and data analysis. So we have seen that earlier as well, right? So if you want to, condense it into, let's say 150, 200 words. So probably this is what you're going to do. So we saw those 4 lines, right? They talked about the methods, the tools and findings of the research. So that could be the best example to talk about. And 1 or 2 sentences about the findings of the study. So normally you conclude here, or if you have space, you also give 1 conclusion line about where is this like applicable, like what are the implications of the study. So this is probably how you can condense your abstract, and this is the order of the content that you can present in your abstract. Right. Most important thing, like a lot of people, writing is such an activity that if you think you have written, that's a huge thing done. You get sense of achievement and you think I'm tired now. A lot of work is done. Okay. And a lot of people end it there. Okay. They don't, pay further attention to that written draft, right? So post-writing is a decisive factor, actually, okay? That ensures the quality of writing. So as basic as proofreading for grammatical errors. And sometimes what happens that we are so engrossed in the content of topic or research that we don't see or we oversee some basic grammatical errors, okay? Because in our head, the content is important and in our head, we are right. It is very important for you to have somebody else read this. That person can be out of your area of research or the person, somebody who is not from that actual area of research, okay? Can be just somebody who is good with that language, in this context, English. So has good sense of the language, right? If it is going to be, and I think that would be the right test of an abstract. If you present it to somebody, if you give it to somebody who is not in your area, who is from a different area, can still understand what is that you're trying to say through this abstract or document, that would be a good test. If that person doesn't understand, because somebody in your area would still try to sympathize with what you're saying. Like even if there are 1 or 2 errors, they will try to understand, okay, this is what you're trying to say. But that person who is out of your area needs an absolute clarity, okay? And that's where a lot of your mistakes would be highlighted, and that's what you're going to correct. So I think it would be a good idea to give it to somebody who is out of your area, like from a different area of expertise, and ask them to read it. Use transition words to maintain the cohesion. So don't make jumps from one to the other. So as we said, the order, like a couple of statements about background or the theoretical understanding of the area, from there to the gap, from there to the rationale, from there to the research question, from there to the methodology. So this is a systematic progression of a document, right? So you need to have appropriate words for you to link one idea with the other. Don't give, make sure that you don't have sudden jumps which are out of context, okay? So that's what makes a difficult, that gives a difficult experience to the reader and more to the reviewer, because reviewers are people who are very, very particular about these things, okay? element redundancy, repetition, oversight, simplifying sentences. So particularly in abstract, you don't have to simplify anything. Okay. Normally also, we don't give references in abstracts. Okay. So even if there is a term that you're using, definitely if that term is relevant, the people are, of course, if you're going to use a term, abbreviations or acronyms, you'll have to define them for the first time and then use it as acronyms or abbreviations later on in the document. But you don't have to simplify what that means in abstract, because that is, you don't have space for that, right? So make sure that it is not there. Yeah, you don't repeat the sentences, like let's say sometimes meaning is the same, just the words are different, right? So that kind of a repetition or any sort of redundancy is something that should be avoided. Get an expert feedback, as I said. So maybe you can run it through two kinds of people. One is somebody who is not from your area of research, get feedback on the language, and then give it to somebody who is in your area of research. If this paper is something that is going to be reviewed very hardly, and you know that journal is very, very important for you, make sure that you give it to the people who are experts in the content area as well. Ask them to give feedback and then fix the problems therein. Okay. So with that, I would like to refer to something called Academic Phrase Bank, which is available on Manchester University's website. But I don't know if you already use it, but these are some important expressions, like what do we have in abstract and what kind of statements that we can use, right? So problem statement, you have certain phrases that you can use, certain structures that you can use, or you try to accommodate these structures in your own way of writing. Okay, so you have statements for structures for problem statements. You have structures for approach, what kind of approach you are going to adopt in that particular study while presenting results, and conclusion. Okay, so this is the link. Even if you type Academic Phrase Bank Manchester University on Google, you'll get a PDF copy of it, or you can go to the university website and refer to this when you write. It is very important because this is these are some standard structures that you can use in order to make it look more academic, right? So some strategies while you write, make sure try and use passive structures. Passive structures, because passive structures would highlight the findings or the variables in the study more importantly than your personal statement or your personal voice. Okay, so passive structures can help you establish that. Maintain consistency in the tense. So sometimes people start in simple present and end it with simple past or past perfect. So that should not happen. So make sure that there is a consistency in the tense. If you started with simple past tense, end it with simple past tense. If you started with simple present tense, you end with simple present tense. So make sure that there is no inconsistency in the tense. Use percentage figures instead of actual numbers. Yeah. So like the abstract that we had seen does not have a lot of quantitative data. Therefore, it was absolute number as 4,000. But if yours is a quantitative study, then try and give percentage figures instead of giving the actual numbers. Okay, because detailed description of that would be there in your discussion section when you write the paper. Then use standard abbreviations. So those which are commonly used, you can use them. Don't use non-standard abbreviations, something that you have, something that has emerged through your study, or maybe something that is new. I would suggest we don't use that, because it might confuse the audience. They don't know what does this stand for, right? No citations. Normally we don't have citations. Now we also see some abstracts with citations or references, but normally that is avoided. And data in research paper and abstract must match. So make sure that you if you have already written a research paper and then you're writing abstract, if you have already written your thesis, then you're writing abstract. Normally that's what the order is, right? So that's what people normally say, that, okay, you, particularly an abstract for a document, when you publish, you should write the entire document first and then come to the abstract. Then write it, okay? After you write your conclusion, then come to the abstract, because that's where you can, validate whether, cross-check whether the information is accurate or not. So make sure that the data in your research paper and abstract matches, right? Right, so that is about writing abstract. If you have any questions on abstract writing, particularly, you may note them down. So towards the end of this session, we'll take questions from abstract first and then review of literature. Right, so the second part of this session is on writing review of literature. So again, starting with the definition, what is a review of literature? Why do we need it? First of all, let me tell you why when I was asked by the conveners to give a talk in this particular series, I chose these two topics. First, abstract, because when you talk about publications, the first document that you're going to send is the abstract. If you end up making a mistake, and I'm not saying I'm the master, but this is some of these things I've learned from experience from my colleagues, from my professors, and this is very important. This has helped me. So I thought it is very important to at least address this particular thing, that what is an abstract that is looked for, or what are some good qualities of an abstract. That's what we tried to discuss. Secondly, review of literature. Now, if somebody would say review of literature is something that you read and write, so why do we have? There are other important aspects like methodology, data analysis, discussion, conclusions, and all other things. Why not them? Why a review of literature? The reason being, review of literature, as we will see in the upcoming slides, is something that needs to be very, very carefully planned. There is a high possibility of you getting lost in the ocean of knowledge that is available in that particular field of study. Okay, so it is important for us to be focused, to stay focused. Those who have completed research recently or in the last, let's say, couple of years, or those who are in the process of writing their thesis probably would relate to this, that everything you read after a point is important. It sounds important. It sounds relatable. Sounds like it is about your research. It is about your study, and you have to mention it, right? Now, that's where you got to be selective. That's where you got to be very, very particular. You need to have certain parameters in order to choose what goes in your paper or in a thesis and what does not go there, okay? Therefore, it is very important for us to understand how to plan your review of literature. Planning is very important, and then write. So what is a review of literature? Synthesis of published research in the specific area, normally, okay? Critical perspective towards the existing literature. Now, this word, or this phrase, critical perspective, is very, very important. Summarizing is something else. A lot of people summarize existing literature and they call it a literature review. Summarizing is different, and critical analysis or critical perspective is very different, okay? So every time you got to be, when you say review of literature, you're bringing in something, you'll have to tally it with your approach. You'll have to tally it with your own study. You'll have to tally it with your own context, and then see, okay, this person has done it. How are we going to do it? Okay. So you'll have to be judgmental. What are the points, like when I said, identifying the gaps in the existing literature, when we were talking about abstract, this is where you understand the gaps, by looking at it through a critical lens, okay? So critical perspective. We'll see this with example, but keep this in mind. Involves review of scholarly articles. Now, what are the things that we have? Scholarly articles, journal papers, books, dissertations, conference proceedings, and whatnot. So anything that is a standard academic publication can be a part of your review of literature. Okay, normally it goes with some good quality, good ranking journals and all, okay, and books. So these are certain parts of it. Then yes, it can be the most time-taking section of your thesis. Why am I saying this? Many people would say, okay, we have written review of literature and we're done with it. Now we are writing the methodology or finding section or discussion section, which is a lot time taking because data analysis and all other things are part of it. But you would realize that from the time you have taken interest in research in that particular field, you're reading something or other, and it cannot go unnoticed. So even a single paper, journal article that you're reading, let's say right in the beginning in order to finalize your topic for research, that can also very well be a part of your review of literature. You don't have to sit separately, okay, from day 1 to day 30, I'm going to write only review of literature. Whatever I'm going to read in between this goes into review of literature. No. Anything that is relevant that you've been reading right from the beginning, which motivated you to, venture into this particular area of research, can also be part of your review of literature. Okay. Therefore, you need to plan it in a very systematic way that everything that you read and is relevant counts, goes and becomes part of your review of literature. Therefore, it can be most time-taking. Now, another reason for this to be most time-taking, because sometimes finding right literature, right materials cannot be an easy task. Okay, you come across titles, you note them down, you forget them, or you're looking for a specific title, it is not available, you don't have subscription. So all these could be practical concerns. Okay, particularly on certain websites, you'll have to pay a huge amount for a simple article, right? And they go in like, I've seen articles of costing $200 also at times. Okay, so it is very difficult for someone to invest that. So in order to save time here, we will be discussing certain strategies, but these could be the factors that would lead to review of literature as the most time-taking part of your thesis. Okay. So what are some of the objectives? To set the context of your study again, because what is that people have done so far and what is that you are going to do. So it is very important for you to establish the context, then identifying the gaps in the existing research, right? To rationalize your research, to establish that your research is important because these are the gaps, because this is what is there, and what needs to be there needs to be done through this particular research. Okay. There are certain misconceptions, and this is where a lot of people consider that, okay, if you summarize, let's say 100 studies or 150 studies or this and that, okay, this is review of literature. This might not be the case. So it is simply not a glossary of references. Okay, so it is a glossary, or let's say a summarization of certain kind of type of certain kind of academic documents. This cannot be called as research review of literature. Okay, it is not a literary survey of authors by a lot of people. I don't know if it is if it is being practiced in certain areas, but normally we don't talk about authors' personal achievements and all other attributes. That's not part of review of literature, unless and until there's a thesis or the paper in literature that is inspired by author's life, then probably yes. Otherwise, no. Compilation of summaries, no, it is not compilation of summaries. We will be seeing this. So normally what happens is people think, okay, I have read this article, let me summarize this. This goes one paragraph, this goes second paragraph. No, if you want to put the studies systematically in your research, you need to cluster them. You need to relate them with each other. You need to form groups of people of certain ideology or certain perspectives. For example, you have an author who has written a paper in 1980s, who has there's another author who has sort of, taken reference from that paper and written or published something in 1990s, and there's somebody who has written something as early as 2022. You'll have to put them together. You'll have to make a cluster of them because they belong to a similar kind of ideology. Putting them or listing them separately in separate paragraphs will not form a good review of literature. Yes, this is where a lot of people, make a mistake. They think that some theories, let's say they are taking some theoretical supports, explaining those theories is important. No, your research is not a textbook. Your research is not a guidebook. Your research is something that is drawing ideas from that particular theory, applying. So it is application. It is not a textbook. The information that you think you need to explain here is already existing. There are already publications. Okay, so they are not interested. Somebody wants to learn the theory of relativity is not going to read your thesis. They will go back to the original document and read it there, right? So it is not an explanation. Don't give explanations. Don't give definitions of theory or, like I said, glossary or the terms and their definitions. This is not. Maybe max 1 or 2 words of definition just to get people, give the hint. And this is where the references are important. So why do we have references in academic documents? Because if a reader does not have sufficient knowledge about that particular theory, they read the reference, they go back to that source and read more about it. They don't have to read your thesis or your paper to understand that particular theory. It is that you relate that theory and you give your perspective, adapting that theory. This is how I have applied it. So your research is basically application. It's not theory. Unless and until it is a theoretical paper, which is very rare. Okay. A list of studies that support your research. Again, it is not list of the studies that only support your research. No. You, as an author, as a researcher who is unbiased, or let's say bias-free, if that's the right word, you have to present both the sides of the coin. So there are these people who believe in XYZ. However, there are also a group of people who believe that this is not the case. Okay. So you'll have to give or present a balanced point of view, balanced perspective on an area of research, and then draw from your points from there. So it is not only the group of papers that support your study. So that would be a wrong review of literature. Right? Now, what are some of the features of a good review of literature? Record the most recent published research related to the study. Related to the study is very important, okay? So in whichever aspect, whether it is against your research, your ideology, or for your ideology, doesn't matter. Because you are going to, as we discussed earlier, we are going to present both the point of views, right? But make sure that you have some original studies reviewed. We cannot just rely on second-hand resources or double what we say inside citations. We'll have to go back to the real research, the original research, and draw our references from there. Similarly, you have to identify the latest published work. So in order to establish that, okay, this is the latest, for example, somebody is going to publish today as latest as last week's publications, even if you can, if you have access to, that can also become part of your review of literature. And that is the most credited for review of literature. So your awareness of the area, development in that area is very, very important. And that's what a good review of literature captures. Critical comment on the strengths and weaknesses of existing research. And this is what the word critical is very important. So it is simply not a summary. If somebody thinks, okay, these 50 studies have been summarized and that's it. No, you'll have to give your judgment on that. What is that researchers have achieved? What is that they have failed to do? What is that they have identified? What are the problems that they have faced? And what is that your research going to add to that, right? So you'll have to critically comment on that. Situate this the space for the current research. So make sure that that's what, identifying gaps and then saying that, okay, this is where it is. Synthesis of various research papers as per the arguments. So holistic view. So as I said, one paper or one summary of a paper cannot stand alone. So it has to be like, you'll have to establish a complete, what can I say, group of people, a specific bunch of papers with some sort of ideology, some sort of arguments. Okay, then the next one, then the next one. So there would be, it's not one person talking for one. It is like the entire group is saying that, okay, this is the right perspective. The other group is saying, okay, this is the right perspective. There is a third group which is also commenting on the same variable. Okay, so you'll have to give a holistic view to that. Strong connection with variables in present studies. Now, what are variables? Variables are nothing, basically the important parts of your title. Okay, so what is that you're going to observe? Let's say the paper that we had taken, for example, the abstract, which talked about women's identity, social identity, and their career in engineering or something like that. Okay, so what is in the current education perspective? So education, current engineering education is one variable. Then their social identities is another one. Then probably what are other factors that affect negative or positive factors that could be a variable, right? So you need to understand them as independent individual variables, dependent or independent, and then you'll have to find connections with them. So yeah, let's take an example. So this is an example of situating gaps in the existing research. So here is one, an excerpt of a paper which is part of review of literature that I've gotten, and you will understand how they are smoothly leading to the gap of existing, like in the existing research, and how they are finding space for their own research. This is from language education paper. So as you can see here, what did the authors find? So types of feedback with adults, native speakers, and NNS stands for non-native speakers. So if the children talk to adult speakers, that probably leads to learning. If they talk to a non-native, if they talk to their peers, it does not lead to learning probably, that's all. So if you can read this green highlight here. So given these, given these interesting findings, more studies that examine acquisition as well as use or uptake of feedback are needed, right? So this is what identifying the gap is. Or here we can say, given the relative paucity and mixed findings of the study in this area, it is clearly necessary for future research to carry out more detailed studies with children, right? So they are talking about what is this research has done, and probably there are a couple of other researchers earlier also. So this is where the gap is, and this is the gap that we need to address. Creating clusters. Now here we'll see while Lister and his colleagues have focused on the salience of recast for children, other researchers have questioned. Now, this is where you're creating cluster. You're not only talking about Lister and what Lister and his colleagues have done, but you're also talking about the other people. While this person has done this, other people have done this, okay? While these studies have failed to find a significant relationship between negotiation for meaning and language development in children, right? While these studies, right? So it is not one or two, you'll have to bring them together you'll have to find a common thread and create clusters. And if you write it this way, then you're properly, addressing the existing, existing beliefs in that particular area. Right. There are two examples, and then so normally when we start writing review of literature, how do we do it? Right. And this is the most pushed area of writing. If you are writing a PhD thesis, let's say, or any kind of thesis, or even if it is a research paper, right? Because we think that it is there. We have a folder which has, let's say, 150 studies, which are all relevant. We'll summarize them and it's done. So our philosophy is, if it is due tomorrow, do it tomorrow. Okay. But this is where I think we need to change our perspective towards it. So some stages of writing that we need to probably think of. And again, here we go with planning. So planning is formulating research question, which is the first thing. If you think of research, it has to come through a research question, identifying a problem. Okay. So research question, understand each variable carefully. Decide whether qualitative or quantitative literature is relevant, because if your study is going to be quantitative, probably you'll have to have more quantitative studies. Gather relevant materials, resources, review of literature. Right. Now, how to find papers? I said, okay, you'll have to have the latest relevant review materials, okay, the published materials. How do we find that? So there are certain strategies, probably you already know some of them. So there's something called Google Scholar. So if you create your account in Google Scholar and just put the keywords which are related to your research, if you just feed them, Google will keep emailing you if there's latest publication on that. Okay, so Google will email you, it will give you an alert. Okay, so and so person has published, which has these terms. So go check. So that is one approach, and that can help you because if those terms are highlighted or repeatedly highlighted, then that paper would be is likely to be useful for you. Some section of that paper is likely to be helpful to you. Another one is there's something called ResearchGate. So even on ResearchGate, if you put your title of your project or title of your study saying that this is undergoing, so people who are related to that area will also get to see it. They will suggest you something, or you will get suggestions there also. Okay, so that also can be helpful. Making connections with those people on ResearchGate, who are important in that area of research. So if you connect with them, so whatever their latest publications are, you'll get an alert for that. Okay, that apart, identify the major journals, whether they are available online or not, whether they are print or not, if there are any free resources, if your institution has access for something, or if you know some friends who are in some sort of institutes who can help you with any sort of resource materials, that can also work. In certain cases, even if you just have the title of the article and if you just write to the author, some people are generous enough to give you for academic purpose. Okay, so they will send you a hard copy or a PDF copy, sorry, not hard copy, PDF copy of their paper only for the purpose of your research. Okay, so these could be various ways in which you can actually access the materials for for your review. But yes, these efforts are required. Do not just rely because there's no latest paper available, we cannot download it, or we cannot. That cannot be an excuse if you are writing something, and then if this is an important area, you'll have to have the most latest research that is published. Organizing, so categorizing the materials as per the clusters, as I said, various clusters. So they can be in terms of chronology, they can be in terms of argumentative stance. So what argument are these researchers having, like what is that they are arguing for? So you can club them together. You can give, like, literally you can have folders within folders. I'm talking about folders on laptop. So you can have different folders Like, okay, group of people saying this, group of people saying this, and then save your papers accordingly. That is, if you sort it this way, your job would be easier. If you just download and put them in one folder, nothing is going to be useful. You'll have to break your heads over. You'll have to open each and individual file, see in abstract what they're trying to say, and then refer to that. So that can be a very time-taking and also annoying experience. So make sure that you segregate or you park your papers in certain way that you understand, okay, these are the people, this is the ideology. So you park it accordingly. You can club them as per theoretical frameworks. Now writing. So summarize. So notice the key arguments in the theories, figures, and conclusions. Synthesize. Establish connections among the studies. So make sure that you're not citing one study at a time. Like, yes, you can if that particular study has a major independent stance. But in general, if you are writing review of literature in a research paper, which cannot be as big as a review of literature for a thesis, which is a chapter in itself, right? So in this case, it is not advisable to have one by one summary or one by one argument in a research paper. You'll have to club them together. You'll have to find connections, and you'll have to say these people are saying this. Okay. Provide your critical judgment whether the study has merits or it has limitations, and what is required to be done. Compare and contrast. Identify similarities, differences, controversies, gaps between these papers. So what is that they have not researched? What is that has gone unnoticed? What is that needs to be worked on? And add to references. This is very, very important. So when you write review of literature, you should also work on your references simultaneously. If you're reading one paper, make sure that you are citing it properly and also making an entry in your references or bibliography if it is for thesis with a proper APA or MLA or Chicago style, whatever that you're using. So you can make use of that. Now, how to organize? Like you say, okay, we have, let's say 50 studies. How do we organize these studies? How do we find, like, you cannot summarize each and every and put it in a, let's say, Google worksheet, Google Docs or on a hard paper or something like that. This is a simple way of putting it. Like, once you read a paper as a researcher, you remember what is that you're reading, right? But how to organize it? So this matrix, it can help you to organize your studies or review of literature. So what you can have is, you can have a column for name of the researcher and the year of publication. I've given this as an example, a sample example. So Smith 2022, topic of research. So this is, let's say, the title of the paper, effects of online tools on language development. The research and context. So context is Australia, 200 adult ESL English as second language learners. What are the tools that they have used? So oral interactional test, online interactional transcripts are the form of the data, experimental versus control group. So this is the method that they've used. Major findings. What are the major findings? Okay, these are XYZ major findings. This is the last column is very important. How it is relevant to my research. Now, this is where you'll have to make your own observation, saying that, okay, online tools create suitable environment for ESL acquisition, English as second language acquisition. Okay, so, or English language acquisition. So this is how you organize. So now you have one study now. Now, when you set out to write review of literature, all that you need to have this thing in front of you. Now it is easier for you to make cluster. Okay, clusters. So you'll have like one row, 2 row, 3, or let's say you can set it as per the tables, like this table is for this argument, this table. So this is very easy for you to organize your studies that you read every day. So let's say even if you read 1 or 2 papers every day, put them in this format and see where they're useful. So in this case, you don't have to read the entire paper again. Obviously, it is always helpful to read the paper again, refer to it again, but when you are actually writing it, but when you're planning it, this sort of metrics, this sort of organized, way of organizing can help you at a great deal, right? And these are some of the academic phrases, again, referring back to the phrase banks from Manchester University. So establish an importance of the topic, general descriptions of the relevant literature, general references to previous research, time frame, author as a subject, or research topic as a subject, whichever is most important. Parallel studies. So you talk about two different studies at the same time. Highlighting on this is contradicting findings. This is where your critical perspective comes in. Identifying similarities. And these two can be like, this is the link, Academic Phrase Bank, or you can just type it on Google and it will come. Also, there's another very, very important online resource, that is Online Writing Lab from Purdue University. So this gives you a great help in academic writing. So it literally guides you through your citations, through your review of literature, writing discussion part, writing your abstract and all other things, okay? So you can be an independent researcher, independent writer by using this very, very good, wonderful writing resources. And that's my presentation. So if you have any questions, please ask. I should stop sharing the screen now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I have opened the chat stream to participants. Kindly post your queries, if any.
Yeah, they can ask, or we can write it in the chat.
Yes, I can do that also.
If you're doing any research right now, you're finding any problems right now, I can try and help you, or I can, assume myself in your situation and see what I can do. Okay, even if I'm not going to give you an exact solution to that, but I can do that as well. So feel free to talk, ask questions.
Participants, you can unmute your mics as well and ask your questions.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Let's go one by one. I think it's Mr. Gulzar.
Sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, I have a little bit query about, sir, what is the difference between the abstract in a research paper and the abstract of a thesis or dissertation?
See, abstract depends on the scope of the research or scope of the document.
Yes, sir.
So the scope of a research paper is limited or smaller than scope of a research, like let's say a PhD dissertation.
Yes, sir.
Or any other, right? So it differs in that way. So major difference, I would say, is the variables that you deal with. There are more variables there. It's that scope of a PhD research would be larger, definitely, because the area, the factors that you are going to consider. So length is one thing that you can clearly see, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Someone else wanted to ask something.
Mr. Vinay Marwal has asked how to frame keywords for a research paper.
Yes. So keywords basically are nothing but the factors that you are addressing in your research. So they are like when we write a research paper or when we write a thesis, we know that these are the theoretical concepts that on which we are writing, to which we are referring to, right? So they form the keywords. So the keywords can be the theory. Keywords can be the kind of if you're addressing a specific respondents, So those specific phrases for the respondents could be keywords. Any method that you're using, particular method, so that can be a keyword, right? So anything specific that you're addressing in the area of research, that can be a keyword.
I think one of the participants wanted to know about abstract difference, I think, between abstract and introduction. Should an abstract be part of an introduction or vice versa?
As I said in the beginning, and I think also yesterday, Dr. Mahanand had said it, that abstract and introduction are different things. Abstract normally starts with the context. It gives you a detailed understanding of the context of the study. So again, the scope of an abstract is larger, introduction is larger than scope of an abstract. Okay, so I think that's the simplest way to put it. We cannot agree to have an introduction of 200 words, can we?
Hello.
So that is the major difference that we can see. Yeah. Right. So I think there are no more questions. We can. That's from my end. So session is over to the.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, one question I want to ask.
Harpreet, yes.
Yes, that if we are taking primary data.
Okay.
Hello. If we
Yes.
are taking primary data, what kind of references should we put in the, you can say references we should put side by side in the literature review or in any other material so that we can we can be really, you can say, we can be really motivated that our paper will be published in a UGC Scholars or anything, very UGC listed journals.
Okay. So basically, as if you can recall what I was talking about, the function of review of literature, it is to establish the context. So whether your data is primary, ideally it should be primary. So whether your data is primary or if you're reworking on some sort of a data, again, your review of literature comes from the existing discussion in that area. So what are people talking about? And from there, you are finding a gap. So review of literature doesn't actually get into doesn't actually address your data from your paper. There is a different section for the data. Okay, so here we focus on theoretical perspectives, conceptual understanding of the area, the terms, the theories. So this is where we situate our review of literature. So whether your data is primary, which is ideal, or secondary, but whatever the current discussion in that area that good researchers are having, you should link it with that.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
For your kind responses to all the questions. With that, we would like to come to an end to the Q&A session. Now I would like to request our HOD, Dr. Rama, to give her kind comments. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Walter. I want to thank Dr. Pankaj profusely. I think it's been a very, very, very lively talk, sir. It is no lip service because a talk on research, is very heavy. But I think today with your very nice demonstration, I think that is what makes a really effective teacher. So I think that was, something that made it very interesting, sir. So your step-by-step, slides of how to go about. I wish before I wrote many of my papers, I could have listened to your lecture. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. And I'm sure the research scholars, especially those who are in the process of writing, they would have benefited tremendously from this wonderful talk. So we are extremely thankful to you, and we would love to have more interactive sessions with you in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. That would be a pleasure to connect with you with SRM again. And I'm sure there's a lot for me to learn from you as well. So we'll keep this bond going.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, shall we move on to the final vote of thanks?
Yes, welcome.
I now request Dr. Savita, Assistant Professor, Department of EFL, to deliver the vote of thanks. So over to you, ma'am.
Walter, I think it is me. I have to do the vote of thanks, I think.
Okay.
And
Ma'am. Go
before
ahead.
presenting the vote of thanks, I just request you, Walter, please you can post the feedback link in the YouTube also, I think. Participants are asking for it. It is not reflected in the YouTube stream.
Okay, ma'am. I'll do it, ma'am.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Walter. Gratitude is the gateway to grace. Nothing is more urgent a need than to utter a note of thanks. With humble prayers and thanks to the Almighty, I deem it an honor to place on record my sincere appreciation for the support and the encouragement given by the members of the institution in taking steps ahead towards progress and professional development. Sorry. I am actually immensely thankful to the resource person of today's session, Dr. Pankaj, who carried the entire presentation in a cool and composed way of deliberation. Thank you, sir, for furnishing us with invaluable repertory of information related to abstract and literature review. As you said, it is a very perplexing task in the earlier stages of research endeavor. No doubt the participants would have had a great takeaway today. Thank you once again, sir. Immense and intense amount of thanks is due unto our head of the department, who shows and makes way for the academic ventures always. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank my colleagues who always stand together as a way of great encouragement to us. Thanks to the participants for the real anchors of any event, without whom the success of the sessions would be meaningless for sure. Thank you once again. Join us for tomorrow's session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And you are
Thank you,
receiving a lot of appreciation in the YouTube stream also. People are very much grateful, actually.
I would love
It is
to.
a very crystal clear presentation. As you said, no, literature review is a very, very important topic, actually, that needs clarity. And you have given that, and that is appreciated in the YouTube stream, sir. I have been going through all the. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Please share the feedback with me if possible.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much,
thank you so much,
Dr. Emma, Dr. Savita for contacting me, Professor Walter, Dr. Nagamani. Wonderful association with SRM. I've always been very, I don't know, I've been hearing about, I've been a neighbor of SRM AP because I was working at VIT. So I've been hearing about SRM and all, and this is one formal occasion for me to be part of your wonderful institute. So thank you very much again. So with your permission, can I leave the room?
Yes, sir. Yes,
yes.
sir.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nagamani.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Walter?
Okay, ma'am.
Walter,
Yes, ma'am.
live stream, have you stopped?
No, I kept it running because I just posted the feedback
Yeah.
there, and I'll stop it in a few seconds,
But
ma'am.
if we stop live stream, it won't affect the people and filling the feedback, no?
Yeah, I know, but the
Because
stream, the
it
chat
will,
also will stop, but they can still replay it.
Okay.
Like, I'll stop it, ma'am.
We will wait for 2 minutes then, 2-3 minutes.
Ah. Savita ma'am, you can go ahead and lead the session, ma'am.